Hello and welcome to Hacked, a cybercrimes webinar from the inTEC group. I'm Owen Collar, Head of Cyber Security Audit and Lead Assessor for the Cyber Essentials scheme. Thank you very much for joining us today. We've purposely kept this webinar to a brief 30 minutes as we appreciate everyone is very busy and we want to be as concise as possible. So a quick overview of the inTEC group for those who don't know about us. We are a group of ICT specialists with offices in various locations across the UK and Ireland, and a team of over 120 people. Founded in 2016, we are a Microsoft Gold partner who specialises in 6 key solution areas: connectivity, mobile, unified comms, cyber security, managed services, and smarter working. Today, I'm going to focus on one of these 6 areas, cyber security. Specifically, I am going to cover the key cyber crimes you need to be watching out for this year and explain how cyber criminals are using ever more sophisticated methods to attack organisations just like yours. I'll update you on the Cyber Essentials scheme and the changes you need to know about this year. And most importantly, you'll go away with 10 top inTEC cybersecurity tips for your organisation that you can implement immediately. So let's get started. As you know, this webinar is called Hacked. But what does hacking actually mean? Simply put, hacking is the act of identifying and then exploiting weaknesses in a computer system or network, usually to gain unauthorized access to personal or organizational data. Many hackers are part of organized crime gangs and operate with a full organizational structure. It's big business. The money involved can be immense. In recent years, the use of sophisticated techniques and tools used by hackers has become increasingly prevalent. From identifying system vulnerabilities to using ransomware, threat actors are continuously finding new ways to infiltrate systems and cause disruption. What's worse is that many of these attacks are successful, making it all the more important for organizations to have a comprehensive security strategy in place. Today, I'm going to run through 5 real-life examples of organizations that have faced issues with their cybersecurity. I hope you find these interesting. Each will demonstrate the vulnerabilities faced and the lessons learned. Don't worry about making notes. We will email you a copy of this presentation after the event. One point to note, in all these examples, we've changed the names of all parties involved. Okay, let's start with the first example. I happened to be on site at a company called Silver Designs one morning. I was completing some user awareness training with key members of staff. Whilst there, a member of the accounts team, Brian Young, came over and asked me to have a look at an email that had just come in from their managing director, Claire Smith. The content of the email from the managing director sent to the member of the accounts team requested the invoice to be paid. It read, "Dear Brian, please pay the below ASAP and let me know once done. Regards, Claire Smith." Below this email was a request from a guy called Gareth Wilson addressed to Claire Smith. It read, "Hi Claire, further to our telephone conversation earlier, find below the bank details for payment. Please ensure this is paid today." The information below this relates to bank account details and a requested amount of over £12,000. The email chain was very convincing. It all looked identical to one of their corporate emails, header, footer, name, everything apart from one minor difference in the email domain. the correct email address for Claire Smith is claire.smith@silverdesigns.co.uk rather than claire.smith@silverdesigns.email. The whole transfer request and email chain was fake. The email domain had been registered that morning from Miami, specifically to perform this targeted whale attack. A whale attack is a form of social engineering and can be defined as whaling is a highly targeted phishing attack aimed at senior executives, masquerading as a legitimate email. Whaling is digitally enabled fraud through social engineering, designed to encourage victims to perform a secondary action, such as initiating a transfer of funds. Thankfully, due to the user awareness training completed that morning, it was quickly spotted and prevented from happening. Unfortunately, I have worked with some clients who haven't been as fortunate, with employees authorising payments through fraudulent emails just of this nature. So what are the lessons learned? Email filtering, imposter checking, use enterprise class mail filters, user awareness training, and check unusual transaction requests. So user awareness training. One of the best ways to protect yourself and your company is to ensure that your employees are educated on the risks and able to spot suspicious emails. User awareness training is a highly effective tool to help your employees detect phishing emails and other dangerous cyber threats. It can equip them with the knowledge and skills needed to identify malicious messages and act quickly to protect your data from potential compromise. Furthermore, increased vigilance will also help create a more secure working environment for all users, making it easier to identify any issues that may arise from phishing or other malicious emails. Just a quick break now as we delve into the subject of social engineering a little further. This video is a great overview.
In cybersecurity, social engineering refers to a wide array of tactics that can be used to trick you into opening a malicious email attachment, clicking on an unsafe URL, or sending money or valuable information to an attacker. It's the art and science of manipulation. Attackers use any information they can grab from your social networks and use your basic human nature against you. By playing off deep-rooted impulses, such as fear, desire, and empathy, the attacker hijacks your normal thought process to make you act on their behalf. Social engineering against your organization can lead to credential phishing, wire fraud, and more. It's often combined with other techniques, such as email domain spoofing, where fraudsters send emails from a trusted domain. So, how can you avoid a socially engineered attack? Here are a few tips. Slow down. They are relying on you to act impulsively, without thinking. Be suspicious of anything that came unsolicited or is unexpected, even if it appears to come from a trusted website, coworker, or even your boss. Don't click on links in emails. If it appears to come from a trusted site, go to the actual site to check your information. Stopping socially engineered attacks requires a cyber defense centered on people, not technology. That includes stopping attacks from reaching their targets and training people to recognize and report any attempts that get through.
On to our second example now. 3 years ago, I was approached by a firm of solicitors who had a client who had fraudulently lost £80,000 in a house purchase and asked for me to investigate how it had happened. Clearly, the client was very upset, and neither they nor the solicitors knew how this loss had happened. The client was accusing the solicitors of having a data breach and was holding them solely responsible. On investigation, it was found that the client's computer had been infected by malware, and his username and password for his email account has been compromised and exposed to the hackers. They were then able to log into his email account remotely and had put rules in place to delete the genuine emails from the solicitors and replace them with their own. All the time, the client thought he was dealing with the solicitors. He was actually communicating directly with the hackers. And in advance of the house purchase, they were even bold enough to ring them pretending to be one of the senior partners, informing they had gained from the solicitor's website. They rang explaining they had changed their bank account details and on exchange day would need to pay the money to a different account. On exchange day, the client received an email from the solicitors, the hackers, with the bank account details to transfer the money, and as the client was 100% convinced the information was genuine, they attempted to perform the transfer online. The bank refused to do the transfer as the information with the account name and number didn't match. The client then rang the bank desperate to transfer the money over the phone again. They told him the information didn't match the records. However, he insisted the bank paid the money. Subsequently, of course, sadly, he lost the whole £80,000. He was never able to recoup that amount. One of the lessons learned here is that fraudsters will do their homework. They will use open source intelligence to gather information. Your anti-malware, it must be installed and up to date. Don't trust someone that rings you. Always ring back a trusted number and perform regular user awareness training. I mentioned anti-malware software just now, but what actually is malware? Malware is malicious software that is specifically designed to disrupt, damage, or gain unauthorized access to a computer system. One of the ways of protecting your devices and network against malware is to keep your software up to date with the latest software patches. An additional method is to ensure that you have antivirus software installed and updated. Are all of your computers, your laptops, and your mobile phones protected against malware? You can largely avoid the potential for harm from malware by detecting and disabling malware before it causes harm. That's the anti-malware software. Executing only software that you know to be worthy of trust. Allow listing. And executing untrusted software in a separate environment that controls access to other data and sandboxing. Moving on to example 3. I was contacted by a manufacturer's first thing on a Monday morning. They had a member of staff who claimed they couldn't open one of their files. Apparently it had a funny icon. On investigation, it was established their file had been encrypted. I quickly checked the file server and noticed several other files with the same icon. Their entire network was instantly shut down, and all users asked to shut down their PCs. As it was an early Monday morning with no work completed since Friday, IT decided to restore their network back from that previous evening, as the organisation had a resilient and tested backup solution in place. The network was restored in less than an hour, and we had all users working. A full post-mortem took place with a full security audit completed of the network. It was discovered that a software vendor had been given administrative access to the network by their IT department and had opened themselves a master remote port to support the system. This had been discovered by the hackers, and they had used this unknown backdoor into their network as their way in. Employee monitoring software was also in place on the server that had been hacked, which had recorded the hackers' actions, recorded their IP address, their activity, and importantly, their own usernames and passwords to their own online portals. Their primary motive was to commit online credit card fraud using this compromised server, and to cover their tracks, attempted to encrypt the network on their way out. The information gathered about the hackers was passed on to Action Fraud, who investigated the crime involving thousands of pounds worth of credit card fraud. So, what were the lessons learned in this example? That not all attacks are targeted. The hackers found an available server and used it for fraudulent activity. Check your backups and have a plan. Recovery was swift. It could have resulted in considerable downtime. Disable or delete old accounts. If you have updated your password policy, the legacy accounts could have weak passwords, and this applies to the cloud. Perform regular vulnerability scans and have admission rules for MSPs or service providers. Do they need always-on access? So, administrative access. Is there a process that's followed before a member of staff is given an administrator account? Consider whether a user account creation process would help your organisation. It might be that only once someone has signed their paperwork and received clearance, if appropriate, they are issued with a computer, user, or administrative account. Consider whether you could create a set of rules around administrator accounts. You would need to clarify who has the administrator accounts and ensure that these accounts were not used for emails and web browsing. Regular account activity is risky on an administrator account, as any compromise can happen with a higher set of permissions, meaning there is potential for greater harm to your system. Do you have a process for ensuring employees do not use administrator accounts for day-to-day activities, such as browsing the internet and checking emails? Staff should have separate user accounts if they are expected to perform both administrative and routine functions, and they should log in with their standard user accounts for day-to-day tasks. Administrator accounts must be used only to install or modify software and to change system settings. It is often necessary to use a combination of policy and staff training to achieve this requirement. So on to the fourth example. Performing some security updates on an accountant's network, I needed to reboot a remote desktop server. Noticed a logged in user had a Facebook page open. I was surprised, as this company had a fairly robust HR policies and procedures that disallowed accessing social media websites. On further investigation, it could be seen that the Facebook page was logged into an account which wasn't an employee of the accountants in practice, but an ex-partner of one of the clerks. This prompted a full network security incident and review, which discovered users working remotely were using their own computers with VPN usernames and passwords saved within their own systems. The hacker in this instance was a babysitter who had decided to use the home computer and inadvertently access the accountant's remote system, potentially accessing personal and sensitive information. A serious GDPR data breach. So what were the lessons learned here? Have bring your own device policies. Know which devices are connecting. Insist IT departments configure connections securely. Turn on two-factor or multi-factor authentication. Have no automatic logins. Always prompt for passwords. Lock your device and don't store passwords. Have timed access. Have an auto lockout. Have you enabled MFA on all accounts to access all the cloud services that you use? As well as providing extra protection for passwords that are not protected by other technical controls, multi-factor authentication should always be used to provide additional protection to administrative accounts and user accounts that are accessible from the internet. No matter how an attacker acquires a password, if multi-factor authentication is enabled, it will act as a safeguard on your account. When you are setting up your cloud service account, you will be asked to set a password. This must have at least 8 or more characters. You must also enable MFA on your account. This means that in addition to the password, account holders will be asked to prove their identity with one or more other ways. This could be through a code sent to another device, such as a text message to a mobile phone, or a single-use code generated by an authenticator app or physical token. There are 4 types of additional factor that may be considered for businesses: managed or enterprises device, an app on a trusted device, a physically separate token, or a known or trusted account. Now on to my final example. I was asked to investigate a hospitality network which had been completely locked out by a ransomware attack by a zero-day exploit which had previously not been seen. Every document within the hotel shared folder structure had been encrypted with a message to pay several bitcoins to have the files unencrypted. Every type of file had been encrypted: pictures, menus, accounts, databases, and the entire booking system was down and unavailable. How would such an attack been able to affect the entire network? A user who had local administrative rights on their computer had clicked on a link received within a phishing email. This had subsequently installed a piece of malware which started encrypting every file the user had access to. Unfortunately, there was no user segregation in place across the network, and that particular user had access to everything. They didn't need access to everything. It was just the easiest way of managing their users. To make matters worse for the hotel, their backups hadn't been checked for several months. They'd run out of space and had stopped working. They pretty much lost everything going back 6 months. This to them was a disaster, with hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of unpaid invoices. Many lessons were learnt by the hotel, including never to use a computer as an administrator. Always install Windows and application updates. File permissions, least privilege. Does every user need to be able to access every file? Segregate the network. Mail filtering again, have link protection, employ an enterprise class mail filter solution. Perform regular user awareness training. Check your backups. Do they work? Do they back up everything you need? Restore files. Test your MSP. Check, and check again. Cloud backups ensure your backups are located away from your network with a physical air gap. And consider cyber liability insurance. Sometimes recovery can be expensive. Fall back on the experts. Backing up data, a new Cyber Essentials recommendation. Do you have a system for backing up your organisational data? Data backup is not included as a mandatory requirement in Cyber Essentials because it is not a defensive control. Cyber Essentials focuses on defensive technical controls. However, despite the best cybersecurity efforts, there is no such thing as a completely secure system, and all organisations are at risk of a cyber attack, accidental damage, or even natural disaster. Backing up your data means creating a copy of your information and saving it to another device or to cloud storage online. It is recommended that you back up your files regularly and check that your backups work. This will help you recover more quickly if your data is lost or stolen. Before we wrap up today, I would just like to mention password policies. As I have referenced password security a few times already, it's absolutely crucial that you have secure and unique passwords in place. The traditional password advice built around password complexity fails. It tells us to do things that most of us simply can't do, such as memorize lots of long complex passwords. Passwords generated from 3 random words help users to create unique passwords that are strong enough for many purposes and can be remembered much more easily. Let's break for this very short but very funny video, which highlights some of the issues around password security and social engineering techniques used by criminals to ascertain your password.
We're talking about cybersecurity today and how safe people's passwords are. What is one of your online passwords currently?
It is my dog's name and the year I graduated from high school.
Oh, what kind of dog do you have?
I have a Chihuahua Papillon,
And what's its name?
Jameson.
Jameson. And where'd you go to school?
I went to school back in Greensburg, Pennsylvania.
What school?
Hempfield Area Senior High School
Oh, when did you graduate?
in 2009.
Oh, great.
It's like my cat's name and then just like a random number.
Okay. Have you had this cat for a while?
Yeah, she's my childhood pet.
Aw. And what's her name?
Her name is Jolie.
Jolie. So like a password of yours would be Jolie and then a number.
Yeah.
Like number 1.
Like my birthday,
Oh, when is your birthday?
June 12th,
Oh, nice. And what year were you born?
95.
Oh, great. So Jolie, 6/12,
95.
95.
Yes.
Got it.
So you mean to give my password right now? No, I cannot do that.
But we all want to know what it is so we can tell you if it's strong or not.
Oh my goodness. Let me think. Okay, one is Tel Aviv. Yeah. 468, and then Israel. It's only 3, but it's for me it's strong enough.
Ireland, 1, 2, 3, 4. Gemma, 1, 2, 3. Spelled Gemma.
Well, most of them are Italian.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah. So
what? Like what's a good Italian password?
my grandma's name,
What's your grandma's name?
Maria.
Maria. So Maria is your password?
Oh yeah, now you know my password. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So, in summary, what have we learned from these 5 examples? Let's quickly recap our top 10 tips for cybersecurity best practices. Administrative use. The default setup of Windows 10 is insecure. Don't use a computer as an administrator. Phishing, smishing and vishing, social engineering, open source intelligence. Hackers will use the information they already have about you. Bring your own device. Know you bring your own device policies. Know what your users are using. Perform user awareness training regularly. Patching and updates. Make sure your operating systems and applications always have the latest updates installed. Anti-malware software installed, up to date, protecting websites as well. Stop using unsupported operating systems. Windows XP, Windows 7, very insecure. Have secure and unique passwords. Use 3 random words. Stops brute force and dictionary attacks. Manage your user privileges. If they don't need access, don't give it. Backups. Test your backups, both offsite and secure. Finally, I'd just like to touch on Cyber Essentials. For those of you who may not know, Cyber Essentials is an effective government-backed scheme that helps you to protect your organisation, whatever its size, against a whole range of the most common cyber attacks. Looking ahead for this year, there are some changes coming into play. The April 2023 update to the Cyber Essentials technical requirements will focus largely on a series of clarifications. It will, however, also include important new guidance. There will be clarification on firmware. All firmware is currently included in the definition of software, so must be kept up to date and supported. And due to the difficulties with information provided by vendors, this is changing to just router and firewall firmware. Third-party devices, and further information and a new table clarifying how third parties' devices, such as contractors or student devices, should be treated in the application of Cyber Essentials. Device unlocking. A change in this section to mitigate issues around some default settings in devices becoming unconfigurable. And where this is the case, it is acceptable for applicants to use those default settings. Malware protection. Anti-malware software will no longer need to be signature-based, and clarification has been added around which mechanism is suitable for different types of devices. And sandboxing is being removed as an option. There's also going to be some guidance on zero trust architecture in the context of achieving Cyber Essentials, and a note on the importance of asset management. So that brings us to the end of today's webinar. I hope you found it really useful. And before you dash off, I'd just like to mention that we are offering a completely free, no obligation vulnerability scan of your public IP address to every organisation represented on this webinar today, as a thank you for joining us. The scan would immediately detect any defects in your firewall security program. If you're interested in booking one today, please simply leave your contact details in this chat, email or call me. If you're looking for a deeper dive into all of your cybersecurity processes, may I recommend the inTEC Cyber Security Audit. It's a comprehensive review of an organisation's IT infrastructure. Once the audit has been completed, you would receive a really useful report of your IT security capabilities and vulnerabilities, along with a tailored list of recommendations of how you could improve your cybersecurity. Thank you very much. Please do let me know if you have any questions.